Hello, YouTube. We are here with a great interview.
Yes.
We're eating a lot of OU crow.
Yes, but it's all college football.
A ton of college football with our guy.
Oklahoma fans and non-Oklahoma fans will love this one with
Gabe Ikard. Fantastic. So subscribe, comment. It's fantastic. We went long because it was worth it.
Yes.
So enjoy. We'll see you guys
next week,
as always. Hello and welcome to Unnecessary Roughness.
Always awkward when...
Always awkward.
But you can... This podcast is presented by...
Something that's not awkward.
Yeah.
High noon.
High noon.
I can go right into it.
Yeah.
I can talk about it.
I'm going to...
Right off the top. Yeah, get on your phone. No, I always try to recreate Brandon's awkward intros,
yes.
But, it doesn't ever work because I'm not as awkward. But we are presented by High Noon. This is a really exciting episode. We have Gabe Ikard of... basically everything. Sirius XM, OU. We talk a lot about OU, a lot about the landscape. And honestly, the whole time I just wanted to crack open one of these High Noons because we were just talking football, baby.
Did you see Katie's story today?
I was so jealous. I was on Metro North going home. I had to stand the whole time. It was so busy.
This morning.
Oh yeah, no, it was last night. The guy across from me, I just heard a crack. I look over and he's a High Noon, and I could see in his bag he had 2 more. It was just that kind of day. I was so close, like shit you not, so close to asking him like how much for the next one. I wanted a High Noon. I ran for the train, didn't get one, and just sitting there watching him drink it.
That story would have been much better if it was this morning. You're right. If it was like 7 o'clock in the morning and she's on the Metro North, just be like, I really need that peach right now.
I saw it this morning and I was like, oh my God, why is someone drinking at 8 in the morning? Which I mean, no, I'm not judging, and I was like, maybe,
rules.
Yeah, or maybe it was an individual that just got off of construction work or whatnot, and they wanted to drink.
Listen, there is no time of day that's bad for High Noon.
Oh no, I've had one at 8 in the morning before.
I for sure have. We shot the new High Noon commercials in the Hamptons earlier this week. It's Dave is a part of it, so it was the way that it was done was a lot of fun. But because Dave was a part of it, he was obviously the star. So the rest of us that were there got to hang out by the pool in the Hamptons and drink High Noons all day. It was fantastic. We were doing the pool pack, which obviously it's the time of the year for the pool pack. I got to just sit and drink peach all day. It was fantastic. But we also have the tequila, as you know, with the strawberry, lime, grapefruit, passion fruit. So if you go to highnoonspirits.com, you can find it. You can Drizly it. You
can find it anywhere.
You can find it anywhere. It's High Noon. Keep an eye out for those new pre-roll commercials too. They're very funny. We get to make fun of Rico.
And then we have the
get to make fun of Rico.
We have the tropical pack in front of us, the tequila. There's so many options.
We love it. So yeah, High Noon, and what a seamless ad that was. Great interview today. We were going to do news and notes. Nothing is really time sensitive. We talk about the EA lawsuit, which by the way is not that big of a deal.
And it's not that big of a deal. And while we were doing this, I got some text messages. Oh, Katie actually sent me one. That it's the EA is still on, is the NCAA football game is top priority for them in 2024, and it's still on path to happen next summer.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people are seeing it and looking at, what happened with the Ed O'Bannon stuff, and you're like, oh no, it's going to be off the table. It's not. It's more of a problem with the negotiation to the rights between like 2 different groups. So we'll talk about that next week. We'll talk about everything, but we have a fantastic interview with Gabe Ikard, played at OU, played in the NFL, has a podcast, The Oklahoma Breakdown, with Teddy Lehman. I've been on it. It's great. He also does the Sirius XM show for the Big 12. And I knew
he calls games for Oklahoma.
He calls games for Oklahoma, does the sideline stuff. He's Oklahoma guy through and through. Also incredibly funny, laid back guy. And when I decided that I wanted to have him on, my thought was, you know what? We're going to sit and have to eat crow because as everybody knows on this podcast that listens, whether you're pro OU or anti OU, we talk about it a lot. So much more that we got into in this interview than I thought we would. Really good insight about the SEC move.
Great stories.
Fantastic
It's also great, yes, it is a lot of Oklahoma centered, but it just applies to so much of the landscape. Like, 100%. If you care about college football, you will like this. Like, Oklahoma is another great team to me, but just it talks so much about Lincoln Riley, the moves, Big 12, SEC.
Roster building.
He also made some crazy really predictions. Cool. Like, there were a couple predictions that I quite literally said, are you crazy? Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm actually a little bit higher on Oklahoma than most this year, but I understood your guys' reactions. Guys, you see in the podcast or on the YouTube, it's long. we just
It's
did
worth
like an
it.
hour 45.
Yeah, he's one of those guys, and you said it during the interview. He's one of those guys that you sit back and you just are ready to run through a wall for college football because he just really gets you going for just like the excitement around it, but also just tells the truth about OU and tells the truth about Texas and tells the truth about college football landscape changing and the 12-team play. If we get into all of it, so enjoy that interview. And before you do enjoy that interview, if you are not on the Barstool Sportsbook app right now,
Oh my God.
you should be.
Like, how many times we got to tell you guys? It's the place to be. And I know we're probably in a little bit of a lull for sports, but there's still a lot going on.
There's still a lot going on. Baseball season is right now. There's a lot of
fights. There's
yeah.
a lot of great
But also,
fights coming up.
Heisman futures are coming out.
Oh yeah. Oh, looking at the futures for the football season are always so much fun. The Barstool Sportsbook. You guys go download it, sign up for it today. We know that it's our favorite sportsbook. Obviously, we work
Jaden
for
Daniels
Barstool.
is number 2.
Really?
Look,
What
I
are-
have our odds
what-
right now.
What are the?
Well,
What are
is he tied with a bunch of people?
Yeah, I was about to
It's
say.
Caleb Williams plus 450, Jaden Daniels plus 1,200, Bo Nix 1,400, Michael Penix 400, Jordan Travis 400, and then it goes up.
Wait.
Sorry, 1,400.
Oh,
excuse me.
I was like, whoa.
12, 14, 14.
We know the play there, and we'll get into the guy later in this episode.
Yes, yes, we do.
It's just
Foreshadowing.
foreshadowing.
So go to the Barstool Sportsbook app, download it. There's never a bad time to do it, but the best time is right now when you're starting to look forward football season and you're like, okay, what's my fall going to look like? Terms to apply. You must be 21 or over. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Now let's get into this interview. I think one of our favorites we've ever done. Lots of laughs, lots of Are You Crazies, and a lot of football with Gabe Ikard. All right, so we have got a good friend of the program. We have Gabe Ikard on with us. And Gabe, I have to apologize to you because Brandon Walker is not here. He skipped out to play roof ball today by himself. He wasn't even invited to the actual roof ball experience they had, and I didn't let you know that until this morning. So it's kind of on me for not letting you know he wasn't going to be here, but it's also kind of on him for big timing you.
Yeah, he big timed the shit out of me, and that's fine. That is fine. I've got 2 kids now, so I understand the value of playing with your kids and spending time with your children and how meaningful that is. I get that. But I also scheduled this interview with you guys during nap time. So I planned for it, and clearly Brandon didn't think I was worth his time, and that is fine. I'm fine with that. It's a humbling experience for me. It's good for me.
It's rude, to be honest. And when you told me that this was nap time, I now understand that a little bit more. I know I'm still a rookie in this, only 4 months in, but I know how valuable nap time is. So I appreciate you even giving us that time. But Brandon did. So you were interacting with him and Josh Pate, and we're all on Twitter talking shit. And Brandon just texted our group text and said, I have one question for Gabe. Read it verbatim. So here it is. This is the only thing he felt like asking you before he big timed you. He said, Gabe, I actually met you in 2013 when you won the Warfel Trophy in Destin, Florida. I remember you had a smoking hot fiance. How's she doing?
She is still smoking hot, and that smoking hot. She was actually only my girlfriend.
Oh, wow.
Then we weren't even engaged, and she is now my smoking hot wife.
Awesome.
And the mother to my 2 children. So she's doing very, very well. And I'm glad that that's what Brandon remembers about me is my hot wife. Hey, listen, if you're going to be remembered for something, I'd rather him remember me for that than for anything else. So that is fantastic.
I mean, all of us sitting right here can attest. This is so Brandon Walker. It hurts. Like if he remembers anything, it's hot women. So the fact that your wife is on that list is kind of a big deal because it checks out for Brandon Walker. That
he doesn't remember the fact that Kirk Herbstreit was the keynote speaker.
No.
Nothing about me winning the award.
No.
One of the reasons he may remember my smoking hot now wife is in my speech, I actually did say she was smoking hot. So if he can remember that part, that's some seriously impressive recall. I don't know if he does or not, but that was part of the speech, and it got a good laugh. It landed well.
His memory is really insane, specifically about college football. Now, his memory on when we're doing things for unnecessary roughness or just in general, which our birthdays or whatnot, he doesn't remember that. But he remembers 22 2007 score between you name the school. Oh yeah, I remember that game. So he may remember that speech.
Oh, for sure. If it's college football, trivia, or good-looking women, Brandon Walker is an encyclopedia. So,
Unless it's the finale of The Dozen.
oh yeah, then he just.
Oh, that was
absolutely-
unfair.
He's not here.
I know.
he's-
No,
no, wait,
Well, you know what? We'll now know if he listens to this episode.
yeah,
he
I mean,
won't. Oh, no
he
shot.
won't listen, Gabe. This is your free. We're giving you a get out of jail free card. You can just absolutely shit on Brandon all you want. He will never know. He will never hear anything. You're nicer than we are, though, so I don't anticipate you doing that too much.
I like Brandon. I find him very entertaining. I just find it awfully convenient that he is missing the episode where he's talking to someone that knows more about football than he does.
Oh, I love that. I also.
Which, if you're gonna miss one, that's probably the one to miss.
It is true. So he big timed you, and now he's being a coward. And also, one of the things that I was talking to these guys about when we were talking about getting you on the show, and you know, other than the fact that I told Katie this story earlier about how you and your wife predicted my pregnancy before I had announced it because I didn't party with you guys at Rough and Rowdy when Alex was fighting, because you are really good friends with Alex Bennett, and you told me that your wife was like, there's a reason that she must not have been partying. She must be pregnant. And you were right.
We had heard about you. Alex had informed
good.
us about how fun you were. And for anyone confused, Alex Bennett and my wife are best friends from college. So Alex Bennett was one of the bridesmaids in our wedding. I used to be her landlord, our old
wow.
house. She lived with us out of college. So I have known Alex for a very, very long time. So you look at it, I had heard that you like to have a good time.
It is true. There's no
And
lie
I was
spotted.
very
confirm. We can
confused
confirm.
when you
Yes.
were so I wasn't confused. I was just a little confused. I was like, this is not what I've heard about. But my wife and I, we kind of put two and two together. I was like, she was awfully tame for what I had been told, especially in the setting, like
Yes.
Rough and Rowdy. It's a wild setting, a lot of alcohol, a lot of fun. And you were very mellow and calm. And I was like, she's not drinking. She's pregnant.
Yeah, and you're right.
Did we know?
You guys knew, yes. So
Yeah,
and
but we didn't tell. Yeah.
so
yeah,
I ended up announcing it after, like the day after the fight, because so many people online had started like saying stuff. But what was funny was when you said something to me about it, I realized that everybody at the place probably recognized the same thing you did, because I was turning down shots. I wasn't doing anything. My reputation preceded me as a partier. And you're right, Rough and Rowdy in West Virginia, that is where you're going to party. And Dan, Big Cat, had sent me the money for Alex's victory tab because he knew I wasn't going to be drinking. He knew I was going to be the responsible one because I was pregnant. He knew as well. So I was like, I wasn't fooling anybody. I literally wasn't fooling people that I barely know, let alone people who party with me. So, you know, you guys are smarter than me. But you were right. So congratulations on being right. You'll be right this entire podcast, I can imagine.
Well, congratulations on being a parent.
Oh, thank
It
you.
it's a grind.
Yes,
It really is. It's a grind, but it's extremely rewarding. So congratulations. I'm sure you guys are having a lot of fun. What, 4-month-old now?
4 months, yes. And I know you have a 2-month-old and a 2-year-old. So I'm not quite there yet with a toddler and a newborn, but maybe one day I'll need all the advice for that. One is enough for me. You're right. It is a roller coaster ride for sure.
There's no doubt. See, this is funny because when I listen to your guys' podcast, a lot of the time I'm like, God, would they just start talking about football?
Yes.
And I fell.
And here we are.
I fell
Here we are.
right into the trap. The trap.
Yep.
When you guys were discussing about it, I was like, the comments are going to be right away. Oh, they started talking about Oklahoma at 17 minutes and 37 seconds.
Yep. So welcome to the podcast. So we'll get into it. You mentioned Brandon skipping out because you know more football than he does. I think he's also skipping out because, as everyone knows on Unnecessary Roughness, we only talk about Oklahoma for clicks. That's what we do. We only bring up OU to get the people on social media talking. Brandon only spits his hatred towards Venables and everything for clicks. We're actually going to do it for clicks today, Gabe. That's why we have you here. We are going to face the music because I don't know if there's been any podcast that's a national football podcast that gets more hate from one fan base than we do from your Oklahoma fan base, which we own. We take it. I was on your podcast. I was on Oklahoma Breakdown because of this. What was that, last summer? I mean, it's almost been a year now, talking about the Venables hire and Lincoln Riley going
Gerald
to USC.
McCoy wants us
He doesn't like us.
dead.
He doesn't like us at all.
Which, here's the thing. Gerald McCoy could kill all of us, so like we just have to kind of eat that one. Like we're just like, yeah, all right, Gerald, you're right.
Yeah, I will say
Gerald is an extremely kind guy, but when it comes to being a homer, he's the biggest homer you're gonna find. Like you don't say anything bad about OU or the fans or the coaches or the players. He is not going to stand for any of it, and that's what makes him Gerald McCoy, though.
Yes.
And when you're as good as he was at football, and he was a senior my redshirt year, and I played scout team center and had to block him every single day, which sucked. But
do you remember the hardest he ever hit you?
Oh, dude, because I was a tight end. I went to OU as a tight end.
Okay.
And so I would do individual. So this was my individual group. So Kevin Wilson was the tight ends coach.
Mm-hmm.
He's now the head coach at Tulsa. He just had been the Ohio State offensive coordinator for a long time. He's insane. He's an awesome coach, but insane. And we would go as hard as you could possibly imagine in tight end individual. And my two partners were Jermaine Gresham, who was a first-round pick, and then Lane Johnson.
Wow.
Yes, that Lane Johnson.
Yeah.
He was a tight end. We were in the same recruiting class together. He'd gone to a year JUCO, and we were both in a tight end group.
Wasn't Lane a quarterback coming out of high school?
JUCO quarterback.
Yeah.
Kevin Wilson brought him to OU as a tight end. He tried defensive line, then went to offensive line, finally. So I would do individual with those two guys, and it absolutely sucked. And then Jackie Shipp, a guy named Jackie Shipp, was our defensive line coach, and he made the executive decision that I was the only one that tried hard enough on the scout team, so he put me at scout team center. And I had to snap a foam football. I was like 250 pounds and block Gerald McCoy every day, and I just got my ass kicked day after day after day because Gerald practiced harder than anyone.
Wow.
Anyone. And it was miserable.
Yeah, no, but it built character, right? It made you the man you are today.
It did make me better.
There's no doubt. But he definitely he was not happy with some things that Jack and Brandon said on the podcast. And I have to tell you, when I did the podcast with you and Teddy, I don't think Teddy was fully ready for my takes on OU. I think that I'll never forget that when I was recording with you guys, he was kind of looking at me like, what is she talking about? Because we on this podcast, we find the fan bases that we like to beef with. And I would say, Jack and Katie, don't you think OU is probably number one at this point?
Most consistently.
Which is interesting because Casey and I have been doing a podcast longer than Brandon being involved, and Katie came on afterwards.
We like to remind him of that, too. He was not the first one. We were.
And that was the year. Was that Kyler's year?
Yes.
And it was Kyler's year, and it was 2018.
18.
Mm-hmm. And you were the biggest Oklahoma. You continued to be.
Yes.
With Jalen Hurts and whatnot. And I remember last summer the Oklahoma fan base came on you. Pause. But I was almost like, hey guys, don't you remember she was Miss Oklahoma for 2 full podcast seasons, 100 episodes.
I think it might have even been longer. And Gabe, I think you and I talked about this actually when we were at Rough and Rowdy, or we've communicated about it, because that was what was so surprising to me, because I was so hardcore OU that on our college football show that we do with Dave Portnoy, he would make fun of me every single time because he was like, well, you're just an OU person. You just love OU. Like, you're a bandwagon OU fan. And then all of a sudden, the fan base turned on me, which then I ate up because I thought it was hilarious, because, again, we do it for clicks. But something happened with your fan base, and I know you know it better than anybody, when Lincoln Riley left the way that he did, which, don't get me wrong, any fan base would feel that way, right? I mean, you feel like you've been lied to. He had said he wasn't taking the LSU job. He ends up at USC. And then they switched over to where it was like they hated Lincoln so much. But then you got Brent Venables coming in, who's this incredible coordinator at a dynasty, or one of the most recent dynasties at Clemson. And the fan base broke, their brains broke collectively, and I had to jump on it. When you were living through that, when that all happened, when that all news broke, did you see what we saw from the outside where it just felt like everyone was running around with their heads cut off?
Oh, yeah. And so, man, there's a lot to unpack there. Lincoln Riley was actually the one that kind of mobilized OU's fan base to get on Twitter.
Yes,
like
yes.
he was the one that created the monster.
Eyeball emoji.
The eyeball emoji, like that, and that became a thing. And OU has done a tremendous job with their social media presence and putting things out there. And the fan base really, really embraced that. And then it was once Lincoln left and it went down the way that it did, it was like all the Facebook people decided they needed to come to Twitter. And it's a bloodbath, man. It is. I mean, it absolutely is. And if you say anything bad against the Sooners, I mean, you're not going to find a more passionate fan base than Oklahoma fans. And just the way that all went down, and you got to realize, Lincoln Riley, they lose Bedlam. Me and Chris Plank, who I also do the OU radio broadcast with, we're the first people to interview Lincoln after that game. And as the home broadcast, you can't say that's when the LSU rumors were going, right? And you're not going to ask the head football coach, at least while you're recording, hey, are you leaving for LSU?
Right.
But we knew it was going to get asked, or some version of that was going to get asked by the reporters in the press conference after the game. And Kerry Murdoch, who is a friend of mine, was the one that asked him. And he said he's not going to be the next head coach at LSU. And actually, after that, we were watching it, like we could see it. And him and his wife actually walked back by us again. And I was like, hey, man, that was clear enough. Great job. Whole thing. And his wife gave me a look. And I'll never forget it. And her and I, we had a really good relationship. And she gave me this look, and I was just like, that was a weird look.
Oh, wow.
That was a weird look. But I didn't think of anything of it at the time, right? You're just like, hey, you just lost the game. Like, there's all these rumors going on. Can't be an easy time. And now that I think about it, it was like, huh. But the next morning, we all find out, right? Now, I'd been informed a couple hours before it actually went down. But, yeah, that changed a portion of how the OU fan base thinks and acts and feels. Because Oklahomans, for the most part, and I'm born and raised in Oklahoma City, for the most part, you carry a chip on your shoulder, right? People think a certain thing about Oklahomans, right? Hey, do you ride horses to school? Or you guys all bunch of dumb hillbillies? Like, now I've heard that shit throughout my life, and it doesn't bother me, but some people, you carry this chip. And the fact that Lincoln left for about as different of a school as you could leave for.
Right.
It was like LA, private school, that's very different than Norman, Oklahoma. So I think that added to it. And the way in which he did it, and the fact that, OU is one of the most prestigious programs in the history of college football. Coaches don't leave OU. And he did, and he left it for USC.
Right.
And that was where it hurt a lot of people around here. A lot. And clearly the pain has not subsided completely.
No, because you mentioned too that it's you guys have one of the most passionate fan bases about OU, which is great, which is what makes college football so great. I mean, as somebody who grew up, playing you guys a lot, it's like that's what you want to see. But not only are they passionate about loving OU, now they're passionate about also hating USC and everything that's going on out in LA. And I mean, Jack, you see it more than any of us on social media. I mean, it is by far the loudest, whether you're talking about OU at all or not. If you bring up USC or Lincoln Riley, it's all OU fans. All right, let's take a pause really quick, guys. I am officially back on the workout grind. Officially. officially back because, I just had a baby and all that. And I'm not going to get into all the complaints because nobody wants to hear that. But I will say anybody knows when you're trying to get back on the grind, one of the hardest things is eating right.
100%.
It's just like, it's so easy to order.
And then it just piles up. I mean, I know I'm on the same grind as you. Well, not the same because I just have a baby.
But you're on a health,
I'm trying,
Yes.
But another thing I really like about the company that we're talking about right now is, it lays out everything in terms of like what you're getting in the food that you're ordering. And we're not telling you to go crazy with tracking calories and everything, but it's nice to see, this is how many calories I'm going to get, serving size, protein, whatnot, checking all the boxes, as they say.
Because HelloFresh checks all the boxes.
And they send you a box.
And they send you a lot of fresh boxes there at HelloFresh. So, if you are trying to eat better, or even if you just want more home-cooked meals, HelloFresh is the way to go because it's so easy to order. It's so easy to spend a ton of money on takeout or going to the grocery store. But HelloFresh sends you a ton of options straight to your door. It's peak ripeness. They travel from farm to doorstep in less than 7 days. And I've said it once, I've said it a million times. You get to go pick your menu for that week, and that's huge because if you're feeling like you want certain parameters for that food, or you just are like, you know what, no, I want to make a sloppy joe this week, HelloFresh gives you that option. You can spend less time meal planning and prepping because it's all pre-portioned, which is low-key one of the best things ever, because if you ever want to make something and you have to go to the store and get a whole bottle of a random sauce you're never going to use again, it's annoying. Not with HelloFresh. It's pre-portioned to exactly what you need. No matter what your lifestyle is, you can also swap proteins and sides to make the recipe how you like it. It comes right to your door no matter where you live. Fantastic. And we're giving you free meals. Nothing better than free meals. So go to HelloFresh.com/Walker16 and use code Walker16. You get 16 free meals plus free shipping. That's HelloFresh.com/Walker16 and use code Walker16 for 16 free meals plus free shipping. That's a lot of meals. That's multiple.
And they're big portions too.
They're big portions, yeah. And 16 meals is actually 32 because you get two. So whether you're cooking for two people or you want leftovers, HelloFresh.com/Walker16. Make your summer easier with America's #1 meal kit.
Yeah, I would say, USC's fan base has probably got more on Twitter because of this. I wanted to ask you specifically about the month or 2 months prior to Lincoln leaving, because a lot of rumors came out after that. There was almost, an Oklahoma fan specifically remind me of this, it feels like they felt like they were stripped of a great season that year. And it was because they said the practices, Lincoln had one foot out. Is there any truth to that? I understand you may not be able to say if there's truth to that, but at least from what I heard it seemed like those last 2 months were just very shaky. It's behind closed doors. Or is that just kind of a not excuse, but the storyline that came out, because that team was really, really good?
So it's interesting. I think it was the bye week. So OU was undefeated going into that game at Baylor. I believe they had October 30th against Tech, and then it was November 13th at Baylor in Waco. And I was supposed to host, I think it was the bye week. I was hosting Lincoln Riley's coaches show that week. And for whatever reason, he couldn't do it. And I was like, okay. Maybe so I did it with Dennis Simmons, who's the wide receiver coach at the time, who's now the wide receivers coach at USC. And I was just like, that's odd. And down the line, I had talked to some guys that were in that quarterback room they were very frank that something was off.
Yeah.
That something was off, that the game planning didn't seem as thorough or as in locked in. They were doing some things that they hadn't done, or not doing some things the way that they'd been doing them in the past. But I'm one of those guys that I'm not gonna lean on that excuse.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Of course.
Because I think saying that, and he's brilliant offensive mind. He was the play caller. He's one of the best in the business. There's no doubt about it. But saying that that's the reason they lost that Baylor game or they lost to Oklahoma State, like I think that's an insult to the players.
100%.
And it's an insult to the rest of the guys on that coaching staff, right?
100%.
Especially a lot of those guys that were on the offensive staff with Lincoln, they stayed, right? A guy like Bill Bedenbaugh, who I think is one of, if not the best offensive line coach in the country, he's still at Oklahoma. So I've always heard that, and I have heard some things that things felt off, right, in the meeting rooms, but I'm not going to go there necessarily and say that's why they lost those games. That's why they didn't play for a Big 12 championship that year, because Lincoln had one foot out the door. I think it kind of is insulting to the rest of the guys on that staff that we're all in, right? And to the players, right? Because the players don't know. I mean, you're not thinking anything of it as a player until, hey, all that goes down, and then you start thinking, wait, was something different, and then you go
Yep.
Yeah.
through it in
Revisionist
your
history.
mind.
Yeah, it's definitely revisionist history. So
Yeah, it's revisionist history.
and it's easy because, like you mentioned, that, the social media has changed for everything, and especially at a school that has so much passion. It was easy to look at and say, how can we blame Lincoln for this? And obviously we're going to have to get to the 6 and 7 season last year, which I know you're so excited.
Do we have to?
I know you're really excited to talk about it, but if we can rewind to when you and I met and we started talking about the change, you mentioned that Lincoln is obviously known for his offensive mind. We have no doubt that is known. Look at all the Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks he had. We see what he's doing now at USC. But one of the things we also know was that defense has never been his strong suit. Very clearly still is that way. So we'll see what happens. But OU fans, I think, looking forward to the 2022 season, not that I know, it was all about, well, finally Venables is going to bring in a defense because that's what he's really good at. And the word that I kept hearing and seeing from OU fans was that the culture needed to change, and that the culture under Lincoln Riley, for things that you just mentioned or things we don't even know about, the fan base felt like it needed to change, and Venables was going to be that guy. So when you saw the shift between the Lincoln era to the Venables era, OU fans were actually very excited for things that seemed like they would be fixed right away, because those things were kind of glaring when Lincoln was there, even though you guys had success.
Yeah, and I think a lot of OU fans, even despite the 6 and 7 season, right? I think a lot of OU fans are still very, very excited about Brent Venables being the head guy. I know I am, and BV and I go back. He's the defensive coordinator for the first 3 years that I was at Oklahoma, and he's excellent. And clearly brilliant defensive mind, but he's a hell of a recruiter. And he's just the type of guy you want to be around, and he's the type of guy you want coaching your kids. He's just a good family man, a lot of faith, everything you want, right? That being said, the defense sucked in 2022. It did, and BV would be the first one to tell you that. Like, it was not good enough.
It was gross.
Not even close. I mean, you look at, I'm a big believer in looking at, because OU didn't exactly have a rigorous non-conference in 2022, right? They went to Lincoln, which was a super fun trip. And the first time I'd ever been there, it was awesome. Beat the hell out of them. It was great. And we were all excited. And then it was downhill from there. But I'm a big believer in looking at the conference-only statistics. And the Big 12 does a good job. They do the stats of all the teams in the conference just in conference games, right? And you look at OU's defense in 2022, they gave up 36 points per game in conference games. Only West Virginia and Kansas were worse. They were dead last.
Not good.
In total defense in conference games. They almost gave up 500 yards a game. They were dead last in sacks in conference games. And when Brent Venables got hired, that is not how I expected it to go. I was one of the people that said, okay, you're bringing in Jeff Lebby, who, Lincoln Riley at that point in time, and I still think at this point in time, he's your number one draft pick if you're saying, hey, who do you want to be your play caller in college football? I think that's fair. But, if you look at 2020, 2021, the argument could be made that the next guy you wanted was Jeff Levy. Right. So I was thinking, okay, the offense, it shouldn't take that big of a step back. And the defense should be better. It should be a damn good football team. Right. Still Oklahoma. You still got really good players. And they just, they're a bunch of close losses and just couldn't put it together defensively. And I think the best way to put OU struggles in 2022 in simple form is like they did not play complementary football. The defense and the offense, they took turns messing up, man. And it led to some close losses, and it led to the worst season around here since 1998.
Yeah, it's been a long time since OU struggled. I mean, and not to bring up old shit, which again, I like to make fun of on social media, but every fan base has been there. The game against Texas, I think, really showed, how bad. I know. I'm sorry, Gabe. I'm sorry. You know what? You can throw the 77 throw 77-0 in my face. It's fine.
I said this on the radio broadcast during that game, which that is the least fun I've had at a football game in my entire life.
I don't blame you.
I'm talking Pee-wee football as a player. I'm talking high school football, college football. That is the least fun I've ever had at that game. And I felt the highest of highs in that game. Like playing in it 2011 and 2012, we beat the absolute brakes off of Texas. I mean, embarrassed them 2 years in a row. And there's not a more satisfying feeling, I assume, other than winning a national championship, which I never did, never even played in one. But that was as satisfying as a feeling as an OU player that you can have, is walking in the Cotton Bowl and beating Texas's ass. And being down on the sideline, because I do the sideline stuff for the radio broadcast, being down on the sideline for that game, there's no other way to say it. Like, I was, like, it made me depressed. Like, it was absolutely brutal, y'all. I mean, brutal.
I can't imagine, because like I said, we like to throw jabs at every fan base. We get jabs thrown at us. And so that game was really easy to do that because, losing 49-0, national or national TV, the Red River Shootout is always a great gambling game too. So everybody's watching it, but it really showed me and showed us how bad the team actually was in that moment. Because it wasn't like you guys lost by a touchdown. It wasn't close, which is always going to be a hard loss to Texas. It was like, oh my God, this team is in such a different place than this fan base anticipated to be after losing a head coach, getting a new guy in. And then you got to go lose to Texas, who, by the way, they're not bad, but it's not like they were the best Texas has ever been either. I mean, that was just, it was a glaring opportunity to kind of say, OU is down bad right now.
Guys, they ran the Wildcat as their offense predominantly in the game because their backup quarterbacks were so bad. Which, just so people know, that was not exactly the plan going into that game for Jeff Levy. It kind of took a turn, and he decided during that game that that was going to give them the best chance to win, and it was ugly. But Texas could do whatever they wanted offensively, whatever they wanted. That game, 49-0's bad. Could have been worse. I mean, Sarkisian, I don't know why he did it. He called the dogs off a little bit. And it was that was a low point for a lot of OU fans, because you got to remember, not only are you getting beat 49-0 in your rivalry game, right? Which in the last couple decades, OU has gotten by far the best end, the better end of that.
Definitely.
Thing, right? That they had lost the 2 games previous to that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing people forget. It's like, 49-0 against Texas. That's awful. They had just lost to K-State at home, where Adrian Martinez looked like damn Johnny Manziel. I mean, just carved us up at home, and then went to TCU, and everyone wanted to say, well, hey, Dylan Gabriel goes out with the concussion. What would have happened? TCU would have scored 80 if they had to. I mean, that game was over even when DG went out, right? Jamoy Hodge, that guy's a targeting call waiting to happen. But that capped off a 3-game losing streak where OU fans, I'm sure the players, the coaching staff were like, what the hell is going on? It was,
But
it was a really rough stretch
of
OU football.
What went wrong?
Now, luckily, they beat Kansas the next week.
There you go.
So.
That's a big one.
But what went wrong? Because from the outsider's perspective, and we'll never know as much as somebody like yourself or someone that covers the team as in depth as you do, but you look at all of the metrics. I mean, you bring in Dylan Gabriel, who was unbelievable, and then obviously he gets injured. But a lot of the players, that was a good football team last year. And I still think if you replayed the season out, I don't think they go 6-7 was kind of the low point. Like, I don't think they were going worse than that. Sure, some other things, because the Kansas State game, there was a few things that they should have won that game, in my opinion. There was a few other games they should have won. 6-7, if you looked at a bell curve, 6-7 was pretty much that low point. And if you replayed it, I think Dylan doesn't get hurt, you could have had an 8-4, 9-3 season. We're having a different discussion. But is it just because, one-score games, they happen, they don't break your way? Or was there something that was just wrong? And I don't think, was it just because it was Venables' first year? Because we looked at it as, hey, this is a top 15, top 10 talented roster. Great coaches, great program, great fans. They should just kind of, maybe they take a little bit step back. But if anybody said before last season, oh, man, they're going to go 6-7, you would have looked at them and been like, they're not going 6-7. So if there was just a little bit of what went wrong, in your opinion, I know there's so many things that happen in a football team, but.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a couple of things. First, I do think the culture change, and there's a lot that goes into that term, right? I think that did take some time for some guys to make that adjustment, right? They went from practicing in the morning to practicing in the afternoon.
Yep.
Right? Like it's subtle things like that. They meet completely differently than they did under Lincoln or even under Bob. And there was a lot of change.
Yep.
Right. And not only schematically, right? You've got a new offense and a new defense. And the defense, people think that Levy's system is super simplistic. It's really not. Like there's some complicated stuff in there that is a little different than what Lincoln does offensively. And so you've got an entire offense trying to learn a new offense. You've got an entire defense trying to learn a new defense. You've got a new practice schedule. You've got new meetings. You've got these new programmatic things that Venables was implementing, right? They're called the soul mission, like this different stuff where they're trying to, worry more about not just football for these guys, like life after football, these things, just a lot thrown at you. And I think some guys just got worn out.
Yep.
In fact, I know that some did. Some of the players, it's not even the middle of the season. I'm like, hey man, I am tired. Like we practice, and they practice hard. They practice hard. They get after it. They tackle, like they get after it. And I think there was just a bit of an adjustment period, and they lost confidence during that first 3-game losing. Like that 3-game skid. And I can just tell you, as a former player, like confidence is so important to playing well. Like if you don't believe that you can go out there and play at a high level, you're not going to do it. And I think a lot of the guys weren't where you need to be from a comfort level with the scheme, both offensively and defensively, to where, when you have a little hesitation, when you're thinking a little bit, you're not playing good football. You're not playing fast. You're not explosive. Like you're not violent when you're playing hesitant. And you could see that on the defensive side of the ball. Mm-hmm. You could see guys wheels spinning and all that stuff. And Venables was in a tough spot, right? Do I dumb it down? What I do, what I know works. would I have implemented at Clemson and won national championships with? Do I dumb it down? Or do we work through it and we take our beatings a little bit and we come out on the other side better for it down the line? And as far as I could tell, he chose not to dumb it down, to let these guys make their mistakes. And they made some mistakes now.
And I would predict that was smart to do.
Yeah, it's easy to pile on in the moment, right? But in the long term,
that's a really hard decision to make. And we can even equate it to our lives. It's like, do I keep getting punched in the face and then hope that down the line because I know it will work, but that beating I'm taking right now is tough. And he probably felt it like, and I'm sure even he had confidence issues, not because he's not a good coach, but because it's the first time he's over our head coach. But it takes a lot of balls to be like, all right, no, we're doing it this way. I don't care how long it takes, and I may fall on my sword, but I'm doing it my way.
He is the ultimate believer in the process. And he said it multiple times last year, even after the Texas game. I mean, you could ask him, hey, what are you going to change? He's going to say nothing. I believe in the process. I believe in the way we go about things. I believe in the way we're doing things. We just gotta play better football. We gotta be more detailed, this and that. That's what he believes to his core. And when you hear him talk about it, like, you start believing it, right? Because he's a very charismatic guy. Like you sit in a room with him. I mean, there's a reason they signed a top 5 recruiting class last year. The guy is just he's got a presence about him. But yeah, I'm sure there were moments of doubt, but ultimately he could lean on the success that he had at Oklahoma, right, when he's the defense coordinator, and the success that he had on Clemson, and say, hey, I know what it takes. I know what the process should be. We got to stick to it. We got to just keep chopping wood, whatever cliche phrase you want to use. And it just, as far as the 2022 team, it just never all came together offensively and defensively. Like the couple games where the defense did play really well, like you think, West Virginia, they lose 20-23. That West Virginia defense was no good. The offense has to score more than that. Right. Oklahoma State, right? That was, in my opinion, that was Oklahoma's defense's best game of the year. Right. They win that game in Norman, and you're like, where the hell has this defense been all year? So unfortunately, you didn't get that complimentary football often enough. Right. And if you would have, like you mentioned, Jack, it would have been, it could have been an 8-win, 9-win,
I think even
type
10.
Of year.
No.
We'd be in a completely
different
spot.
viewing Oklahoma a whole lot differently going into 2023.
Yeah, it was a perfect storm for people like us who sit up here and talk about it and say, okay, what can we point out that's going wrong at OU? And it was just like week after week, there was something we could look at. And if Brandon was here, I know that he would probably push this envelope. And you've told me from the very beginning, you're a Venables guy. You played for him. You truly believe that the way you guys felt last summer will be the way you feel moving forward. But Brandon has said from his standpoint that he doesn't necessarily believe that Venables is a good fit for OU. Not because he's not an OU guy or not because, he's a bad coach, but that just OU was so high on him. And then the juxtaposition of what's going on in the Pac-12 for USC with Lincoln Riley, who took so much blame and then just kind of went to a new conference and did the same thing. What do you say to people like that? Because I've been one of those people too. It's like, it's easy to make fun of and it's easy to say, ha, look at OU. But is there any legitimacy to the fact that maybe Venables just isn't a good fit for OU?
I don't think that's the case. However, I do think, and I was not one of these people, right? I was not one of the, Lincoln Riley's a bad coach, get him out of here people. That was not my stance. OU lost the top 5 head coach in college football, right? He went to USC. And it's hard to replace a top 5 coach in college football. But if you would have said, hey, what coordinator in the country do you want to replace him with? I think the vast majority of people that you surveyed, football people, fans, whoever, right, people that have any knowledge of college football would have said, well, can they get Venables? And to Joe Castiglione's credit, like they did. They went and got him. But, yeah, he's never been a head coach. There's no doubt about it. And just like any first-year head coach, you're going to learn some things. You're going to make some mistakes, right? You're probably going to make some game management mistakes. And as seasoned of a coordinator as he was, it's a different gig. The weight of being a head coach is immense. And I know it sounds silly because you're coaching football for a living, but you guys know it well. Oklahoma football is a big deal here.
Mm-hmm.
Just a tad.
The fans care.
A little bit, yes.
They care a lot. They care a lot. And there's a lot of weight that comes with that, the expectation. And maybe he would be the first one to tell you they fell short of expectations in 2022, right? It was not good enough. And no one knows that better than him. He knows what the expectation is. He knows what the standard is. And we can talk about him as a leader, him as a coordinator. In my opinion, it ain't that complicated. They got to get better players.
But
they got to get more talent.
But you had the talent.
Jack Mac, the defensive line, and listen, I was on the radio call for, what was that, the Orange Bowl, OU Bama, right? And then the Peach Bowl, OU LSU. Those, as you remember, those games did not go particularly well for the Sooners. The body types at the line of scrimmage, most notably the defensive line, that's what has to change.
Okay.
Right, and that can lead to an SEC conversation. It can lead, but
say better change quickly.
That you're damn right, it better.
Better change in a hurry.
They've got some solid guys, right? But you've got your Georgias, and this is something you got to remember. Like Oklahoma, you're comparing yourself to the Big 12, right? But Oklahoma is thinking, hey, we are comparing ourselves to the elite of the elite.
100%.
That's the expectation in the program. And you go and look at what Georgia's defensive lines looked like these last couple seasons, what Bama's defensive line tends to look like, right? Ohio State, how many edge guys they're putting in the league. Oklahoma has not had that. And that's why the hope is Venables and his reputation gets more of those guys. And you look at the class of 2024, the recruiting class, they're in on a bunch of guys that are top 10 defensive linemen that they have not been even in the conversation for several years. So I think that's where it starts. It's simple, man. Saban's an awesome coach. Kirby's an awesome coach. Ryan Day's an awesome coach. These guys are awesome football coaches, but they also have the best players. They got absolute freaks at the line of scrimmage. That makes it a lot easier to win football games. And right now, OU's working on it, but they're not quite there yet when it comes to having, especially in the interior of the defensive line, when it comes to having some guys that can, you're preparing to play them and you go, shit, this is not going to be fun.
Can you tell that Jack's been arguing with your fan base about this? Because I believe this was one of those takes where you spit out like a top 10 roster and OU fans did not like that.
And he's right. He's right.
No.
Yeah.
No. Jack, you're right. Right. I'm not saying they got bums.
Oh, no, I know. No, I know.
They've got good players, but good players. And remember, the goal is win the Big 12, go to the college football playoff, win game, go win the title. Like that's Oklahoma football. That's the goal, right? That's the expectation.
Winning a playoff game would be really good. I know I can't talk shit, but winning one
start,
would be
Casey.
would
yes,
be good.
thank you for that. I'm
so
glad that
thanks.
TCU,
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
I'm sure
all out of love.
TCU
All out of
went
love.
and 1-1, and we were all like, "What the?" But they've got a talented football team. They've got a talented football team. There's no doubt about it. But when Georgia is churning out 6 first-rounders,
I know, yeah.
Yep.
That's where you have to start stacking talent at the right positions.
And
D-line, O-line, quarterback. Like I'm an inside out type of guy when it comes to building a roster.
I'll spit out those facts, and they're facts, but they're kind of, it's not, you can't just, if you have a top recruiting class and you look at the full roster and whatnot and it ranks like 7th, it's a good barometer, but roster building, at least in my perspective, it's not that simple, and you just described it. The defensive, offensive line, so it's like, how do you compare a class that has a bunch of 5-star offensive linemen and defensive linemen versus 3 stars on the outside? And maybe because it's not like the Oklahoma coaches and coaches of Georgia and whatnot just wake up and they're like, oh, 24/7 has this guy as the 8th best player, let's go get him. Now, there are some guys you just look at and you're like, that guy's amazing, I'm going to go try and get him. But they do a lot of recruiting and they do a lot of roster building, and it's not as simple as just, oh, they ranked 7th, they should be good. That's the discussion of roster building and whatnot, and it takes a little bit. And the only thing is, and this is what I'm sure Casey was going to ask, will he have enough time to build that roster? What are the expectations for 2023? And is there a chance?
Yeah, no,
like those tweets don't come towards me anymore. They come towards Joe and whatnot that are saying, you got to get this guy out.
Right. Like, we can talk all we want about the comparisons between, Venables and Lincoln Riley and all that, but like, put that aside, because now winning the Big 12 and making it to the college football playoff and the title game, that's no longer the goal, because yes, in 2023 you have that this year, but then you're looking to the SEC. Not that I'm saying like you're going to play with the big boys finally, but like you mentioned, the line of scrimmages do look different in the trenches. So what are the expectations for Venables this year? Because as a second-year head coach, I think there's probably, 3 guys that have kind of a bullseye on them. It's Mario Cristobal, it would be Billy Napier, and Brent Venables as second-year guys that have a lot of heat around them, and Venables even more so. Because in one more year, you're playing Alabama every year. You're playing Georgia. You're playing these teams. What number of wins do you look at this year in the Big 12 and say, okay, this was a successful season? What are those expectations?
This may shock you.
I know what you're going to say, and I think you're right.
The expectation is to win the Big 12 and go to the college football playoff.
Really?
The expectation.
Like real expectations, though, Gabe. Not like,
it does not
this
change.
is OU
I'm
football.
telling you, it does not change.
You're crazy.
When you look at the Big 12, and Jack, he just mentioned it, they're going to play one game where the argument can be made that the other team's got more talent than them.
And y'all,
if you got more talent than the other team, and you're well coached, you're supposed to win. Bottom line, like going 6-7 a year ago, it doesn't change the expectation. I know that may sound strange, but that's just life at OU.
That's OU football.
The players know it.
Nice. It'd be nice.
The coaches
to live that
know
life.
it. That's just what it is. Now, you said, "Hey, will it change when you get to the SEC?" I don't know.
It has to. That it has to, right? Like it has to change.
We're gonna have to go through a few seasons to see how it goes, and then we may have to adjust accordingly, right? But
I don't know if you guys aren't well prepared for the SEC.
I'm not saying that, but I mean, for example, like you guys were supposed to play Georgia this year, which obviously is not your fault nor their fault that you're not playing because it has to change because of the scheduling. But that would have been a little bit more of a barometer going into when you actually go in. It's not that I think OU or Texas is not prepared from a talent, from a talent standpoint, from coaching standpoint. It's just the change from going to play teams, and no offense from, and I've lost to these teams my whole life too, but playing, Texas Tech and playing Kansas to going and then playing these guys that are winning the national title every year, that is going to be a culture shock regardless.
Are you ready to have this SEC elitism?
Yeah, I'm an SEC elitist, right?
Just right? Like, you ain't playing Texas Tech anymore, but then Auburn's 3-9.
Hey, but listen, I've been able to have this elitism for 10 years,
Didn't
okay?
A&M lose to App State last year?
We're not talking about A&M, okay? This is a national football podcast, Gabe. But yes, we did, and we sucked. We didn't even make a bowl game in that $90 million contract. But this isn't about A&M. But no, I mean, it is something for, as a fan base that, anybody who changes into a new conference, you deal with that. Now, maybe you deal with it for a decade like I have, but there is a massive change, not only just from the tailgating and the rivalries and all that changing. It is cool that I think, OU and Texas are coming in together because it is one of the best rivalries in all of sports, in my opinion. But you do have to lower expectations when you're going into a conference that overall is seen as a better conference than the one you're in now.
You would think that, wouldn't you?
A rational brain, but I know there's no rational brains in college football. Not even the best of the best like you.
Yeah. Find me an OU fan that's like, yeah, I think 8-4 the first year in the SEC would be great. Find me that fan, and I would be very, very surprised. No,
they will not be there. I can tell you that from my mentions. They will not be there.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. I mean, it really is. And that is I have so many thoughts on OU going to the SEC, and one of them is that, and this is my hope, that Oklahoma football will get elevated by making that move. And one of the biggest hurdles for Oklahoma recently, you talk the last 10 years when the SEC, right, has been winning national title after national title. Clemson won a couple, SEC, right? I would say the biggest hurdle for Oklahoma in recruiting has been, hey, coach, love what you guys are doing, but I want to play in the SEC. Mm-hmm. And that hurdle now is gone.
Right. It's huge.
And I'm really interested to see what that does for Oklahoma's recruiting and how that can elevate things. Now, OU's got to make some changes, and the leadership at the university has talked about it, right? The in-game atmosphere has to ramp up. The tailgating has been a huge debate. That's got to ramp up.
Wait,
what's debate?
Do you guys think you don't have a good in-game atmosphere?
I would say it's fine, but
I would say, again,
like I think
I've been on the
great.
receiving end. I think it's great. I think the Boomer Sooner thing that you guys do is
it's cool,
horrifying.
But there's no doubt. This is probably the best way to put it. And remember, I went to my first game when I was 5 and every home game until I was in high school. Like I am an OU fan through and through. The fan base has gotten bored.
Damn.
Well,
and that is why, and I know that sounds
I love it. No, I
weird.
love this. This is
But
great.
Yeah,
You look
no,
at-
no,
This
no,
is
no, no.
fantastic.
You're great at what you do.
Let's do a quick
Bulletin board material, Gabe.
contrast.
Keep it coming.
Contrast real quick. 2023. So this upcoming season, OU has home games against Arkansas State, SMU, Iowa State, UCF, West Virginia, and TCU. So if you're thinking conference games,
Yeah, not great.
you're getting Iowa State, UCF, West Virginia, and TCU.
The fact UCF is a conference game still is something I have to wrap my brain around.
It's gonna take an adjustment for sure. Does that get any of you excited?
No, but it's changing.
That's the point. Is my hope is you look at that SEC schedule in 2024, you've got Bama, Tennessee, who I don't know if you know this, their head coach used to play quarterback at Oklahoma,
And you
won them a
guys-
national title.
You guys do not like Tennessee. The one of my favorite two home and homes over the past 2 decades was the Oklahoma Tennessee home and home. Or did they play at home and home when Baker was the quarterback and whatnot? His comeback against Tennessee and Neyland.
Amazing.
And the beef stayed on for the rest of even like years after.
It's understated beef unless
Yeah.
you really know college football.
That's going to be fun. And everyone that was at that game, my wife was at that game, a bunch of my buddies were at that game, say that that's like the loudest, most just rowdy game they've been to.
Yeah, our Tennessee guy who works here said that was the loudest game he'd had been to at Tennessee, and he went to Tennessee. I think the Bama game this year probably overtook that, but very comparable. I mean, that was a crazy game.
So here's a fun story. I know you guys love stories.
We do.
It was my second year. So it was actually the spring of my freshman year. So it was March of 2010, right? And Coach Stoops had come up to me and said, "Hey, Gabe, we're thinking about moving you to offensive line." I was there to be a blocking tight end, right? I was there to block anyways. And he comes up to me, spring ball. I was playing tight end, but he was like, what do you think? I was like, "Coach, I think you get paid a lot of money to make those decisions. And whatever you think is best, like I'm willing to do whatever you think's best for the team." Right? I was one of those guys, right? One of those cliche ass answers
Well,
like that.
it worked out for you.
It worked out.
Yep.
But
You're not going to argue with
you
Bob
guys want to
Stoops
take
anyways.
a guess? The first time, it was after spring practice. You guys want to take a guess who the first quarterback I ever snapped a football to was?
Is it what?
2010.
So
2010,
it wasn't
Oklahoma.
It wasn't Landry.
It was
No,
not
but-
Landry Jones.
Okay.
It would have been Heupel.
No.
No.
Josh Heupel.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
He was the quarterback's coach.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
That
he
makes sense.
said, "All right," he said, "All right, buddy, let's take some snaps." Smacked me on the ass, put his hands under. He was our QB coach, and it was the first time I had snapped a football in my entire life, and it was to Josh Heupel. And 10-year-old me would have been like, "This is the coolest fucking thing ever."
That's where my brain was thinking. I mean, yeah, like the fact I was 10 years off of thinking he was a player because that's how.
But it
warped my
makes
brain
it
is.
was a great guess.
obviously
was right. But
yeah,
yeah,
I did
that's
not
why
expect you to get that. Way to go, Casey.
I honestly,
job.
I was 10 years before. I was really aging you there, Gabe. I was putting you in your 40s right now. So I apologize
he came
for
in
that.
second in the Heisman in 2001.
Remember Winky won the Heisman.
Mhm.
That was 2000. So Winky won the Heisman. OU beat him in the national championship game.
Yes.
So in 2024, we should all circle that game as, unbiased observers for how much fun that'll be.
Not only Tennessee, Hype's got it rolling, right?
Yes.
Right. Coming off an awesome year. They're recruiting, like their NIL collective situation. They got that thing organized. They got it rolling, right? If they can get a little better on defense, man, watch out. But the thing is that everyone thought after Bob Heupel was going to be the next head coach at OU. And remember, Bob Stoops, and Bob's talked about this a lot, one of the hardest decisions of his career. He fired Josh Heupel and brought in Lincoln Riley to be the offense coordinator. As far as I know, Hype has not been back.
Whoa.
Wow.
Since then.
So he's, understandably so, pretty bitter about that.
I think he was at Roy Williams, who was such a stud of a defensive back for OU in the early 2000s. He got inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame last year, and Heupel was out there, right? Because a lot of the head coaches go out to there, and Roy and him were teammates. And OU fans saw some of the pictures of Heupel just around OU guys, and you would have thought, like, people like cried.
Oh, I'm sure they handled it with
They're
grace,
like, "Oh, we
as they
love
do.
you so much." Because he really, and you can ask any of the guys on those, that 2000 team, like he was, and there are a lot of badasses on that team, but he was one of the main reasons OU football like came back.
Yeah,
it's
right, because
it's crazy. Nothing, because I'm not gonna body shame anybody, obviously, but you don't look at him now and think, "Holy shit, this guy was like." When I tell people he was one of the best quarterbacks in the country, people are like, "What are you talking about?"
And a really good athlete.
Yes.
Who could use his legs. Like, you go back and you watch that 99 OU team, that 2000 OU team, like he's moving around, he's mobile. He was a workout warrior, allegedly.
Allegedly. I love that you had to
Now
throw
he's a
that
tape
in.
warrior. He's a tape warrior now.
Now,
I guess.
Hey,
You can coach some ball, but yeah, I mean,
something's getting done. Yeah, no, I think that from a college football landscape, everybody's looking at this upcoming season for a lot of different reasons. But I know for me and for a lot of people who root for teams in these different conferences, because it's not just the SEC that's changing too. Obviously, the Big Ten is changing with USC and UCLA, which we were looking last week. The fact that UCLA is going to be playing at Rutgers and also at Hawaii, it's just insane to think. But looking forward to conference realignment as a whole and just how different everything is going to look when OU and Texas move and USC and UCLA and everything starts to shift. As somebody who's played college football and as somebody who's watched it now as it's continued to evolve, do you like this? I know you like it for OU because you mentioned that, visibility and money and all of those things are going to rise. But as a whole, as a college football fan, are you a fan of what's going on with all of these changes?
I think so. Because my hope is that we get more good games. Mm-hmm. Now, if I was a Oregon State fan or a Washington State fan, I'd be freaking out a little bit.
Oh, yeah. What about Oklahoma State fan?
Yeah, I'm about to say Oklahoma
State. The Big 12 right now, it feels, Brett Yormark comes in, and I do Big 12 today over on SiriusXM Radio. So I've talk about this constantly, but the Big 12 feels solid, right?
I think so,
right?
too.
They've got their TV deal done. Seems like Brett Yormark is an innovative leader. They're going to try some different things as the league. They feel like they're in a decent spot, right? Like everyone's battling for third place after the SEC and Big Ten, right? But I do wonder what's going to happen with this Pac-12 media rights deal. How is that going to affect how things get shaken up out there? Is Colorado going to leave for the Big 12 if the number's not good enough? When are we ever going to get the TV rights deal from the Pac-12? Like and I don't know what the hell San Diego State was doing. I mean, that thing was bizarre.
Insane.
But my hope is that, and maybe this is just too optimistic. My hope is that no fan bases get left behind.
You're a good guy.
And that's the thing. I know a lot of people want to turn it into a conversation about non-revenue producing sports and what's going to happen with all that. And then that leads to a Title IX conversation. And I get that. But my hope is that, especially with the expanded playoff, that more college football fans are invested deeper into the season. And that's why, as much as I hate the automatic qualifier thing for the college football playoff, I think it's something you got to do.
Right.
Because I don't think it's good when you talk about the future of college football. I don't think it's good if the only fan base on the West Coast that is invested in is USC and Oregon. I don't think anyone wants that. I want college football to continue to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the way you do that is you have as many people as emotionally invested as deep into the season as possible. So I know that probably sounds stupid from a guy whose alma mater has left the conference to go play in the SEC.
No, you were the first domino to fall.
Yeah. But there's no doubt about it. And we'll see how it works out. But ultimately, for me, OU's in the cool kid club now.
That is true.
No,
right?
I'm an elitist. I know this. I sit at the cool kids table.
Now I'm in the elitist club with Casey. It feels good.
Yeah, it feels great. But, you mentioned that, more people will be invested at the end of the season. There's a lot of arguments about the 12-team playoff, and we've had all of them here. We're all very pro 12-team playoff. But that's one of my biggest arguments is that when you get to the end of the season, if you're not right now one of those 4 teams or, one of the maybe 5-6 teams that are battling for those spots, you don't care at the end of the season. If you have 12 teams that are vying for positions, even if you take away the top 4, that makes the whole season more interesting because there's going to be more fan bases invested in a playoff, right?
I agree. I think making the playoff is going to start to feel like a bigger accomplishment, right? Because you look at the sport right now. you look at Georgia's roster and Bama's roster and Ohio State's roster. Some of these rosters, like, it is not a sport with parity, despite what Nick Saban wants to talk about. There's not parity in college football, and there's never going to be parity in college football unless you're paying guys salaries and there's a hard salary cap, like in the NFL. It's never going to happen. Guys are going to want to go to certain schools. Guys are going to go to close to home, right? Like, you're never going to get this huge dispersion of talent across the sport. So it's going to be the same damn teams, right? If we played a 12-team playoff this year and you said, hey, you can have Georgia, Bama, and Ohio State or the field, I'm taking that group of 3.
It's true.
Because the amount of talent that they've stacked is, I mean, it's impressive is what it is, but that's where I don't think anyone wants parity, right? Parity is boring, in my opinion.
Oh, no,
for the
don't tell
most
that
part.
to Casey.
Oh no, see, I like parody, but we've already been. I feel like we could do like hours and hours.
I know.
I like the difference. Like I loved when in 2019 when LSU was there and it looked different. I liked TCU being.
I
in
agree.
It.
No, I think that's great. I think that's great. And I'd love that for that to be OU in 2023, right? Don't get me wrong, but
Just win a game.
I just don't think we're ever going to get to a place in college football where the talent is spread out, like 5 stars are going all around the country, and it feels like the NFL. Like I don't think that's going to happen.
But things do change. That
For sure.
That threesome that you just mentioned, Clemson used to be in it. Now they're not far away. You guys used to be in it. It was like Oklahoma's going to make the playoff, and also, I mean, Georgia wasn't in that threesome. Alabama before Nick Saban was almost not defunct, obviously, but they
USC. I mean,
Yes.
they're back in the conversation now after a long hiatus.
And then it's Tennessee's. They're still kind of, I would say, 2 steps away, but they're right there.
But that's why the 12-team playoff makes it so interesting because all of those teams get to play it out, right?
But the only thing I would be concerned with, and we could probably do 5 hours on college football playoff, is Alabama last year gets in still.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, well, Alabama gets another third chance. But
well, and then like Kansas State, we know, like, Kansas State beating TCU in the Big 12 championship game, that was a big deal. But if the 12-team playoff was here, they would also be in it too. Tennessee would be in. Again, we could argue about this forever. So we need to let Gabe go. But I have 3 rapid-fire questions for you before we let you go. Okay.
All right.
Do you want me to give you all 3 first or one at a time?
could I ask him one last one?
Oh, sure. Go for it.
All right. I know
I've got nothing to do. My kid sleeps for another hour and 20 minutes.
Well, I mean, we
so
can keep going.
I got nothing to do.
I think you have an amazing perspective on this, but I want to hear what he says because
Okay.
we've debated this.
Okay.
Who, and I know what your answer is going to be, but I want you to kind of try to be unbiased for a second.
Oh, I think I know where this is going. I'm excited.
Who is more ready for the SEC, Texas or Oklahoma?
More ready for the SEC, Texas or Oklahoma?
And another way this question could be phrased is over the first 5 years, or from 2024 to 2030, which, God willing, we'll all still be here watching college football and we'll have our jobs. We'll be doing great. You'll have healthy kids. We may have, I'm not going to have a kid by 2030, but who knows?
Yeah.
But
Crazy things have happened, Jack.
crazy things happen. Who will have the best next 6 years? And I only say 6 because it starts in 2024.
I'm going to say Oklahoma, and it has a lot to do just with my belief in Brent Venables and the way that they're recruiting and the jump, like the jump I think they're going to get from being in that conference. Because, and I think Texas is going to be a good football team in 2023. I really do. I think that Sark has improved that roster pretty substantially. But you got all these people that are going to pick them to win the conference. It's been a long time since they won the Big 12. And that's where I'm just going to kind of lean on history with Oklahoma. I mean, you look at the Big 12 titles, Texas has 3. Oklahoma's got 14.
Yeah, yeah. And
it's baffling
when
how
you
one-sided that is.
And just, I mean, I feel like I've been like Mr. Pro Oklahoma here, and people are going to say we didn't even really attack them. But
well, that's where some of my rapid fire questions are.
Oklahoma.
I'm too disarming to let you guys attack my people.
He's almost got me. The most excited I've been for college football over the past few weeks is this conversation right here because we're so deep into it. But Oklahoma, decade after decade, there hasn't been a decade except I think one that you guys average under 10 wins a season. That's not normal. There's no doubt. 6 and 7, like obviously is not great for a lot of programs, but that was almost like going 0-12, but you still made a bowl game.
But that was why it was so easy to make fun of, like we've said throughout this conversation. And, if OU fans that are listening to this, and I saw a lot of people so excited that you were coming on for good reason, because it was like, oh, finally some OU truth. It's like the reason it was so easy to make fun of OU last season was because it was so abnormal for OU. And because, all the noise around, not just OU, but USC, it was easy to pounce on. But that's because you guys are so good. You're one of those programs that it's like, oh, you have a down season. Let's all talk about it because it's so rare for that to happen. OU is, I don't think when you say like blue blood, you wouldn't put them maybe like top 5, but they're definitely like a top 10 at least.
No, they're top 5.
They're top 5.
You would say top 5?
Oh, yeah. I would say it's
in the blue blood conversation. Casey, listen, if your goal is to not have OU fans come out of you,
no.
Okay.
It's like they're low key.
I was gonna say
I think
it's way up there.
It's
definitely
low
way
key.
up there.
You could make an argument.
Are you gonna do this, Jack?
No, like
you're gonna say number 1.
Number 1.
But see, here's the thing. I love
Ohio
you.
State probably is the one that could probably say it outwards.
It's definitely very high up there.
Top 3.
This is one of those things where I know our audience will say, well, it's funny when you guys talk about blue blood programs when Brandon's around, OU doesn't get mentioned. But you guys are, especially
Mississippi State sure as hell doesn't come up. I know that.
Well, no, that's true. And my thing would be, Gabe, not everything's about A&M and Mississippi State. The amount of times I've said that in response.
Now you sound like a commentator.
I know, right? Not everything's about it. But no, OU, especially, in my lifetime, in your lifetime, in y'all's lifetime, they are by far one of the most successful college football programs out there. And it just feels like, not
in my
that it's
father's
forgotten,
lifetime.
But OU has such high expectations. I fall trapped to it all the time. We ask the same question that Jack just asked you. We talked about, I think, last week or the week before. And my immediate reaction was, well, Texas, because Quinn Ewers seems to be incredibly ready. Not that I don't like Dylan Gabriel, and I know you guys have the 5-star freshman.
Quinn Ewers, it's interesting. He played one good half against Alabama.
Yep.
Did y'all watch the rest of the games?
But he had one good half against Alabama and Oklahoma State, and then his second half against Oklahoma State, he looked as lost as, and I'm sure Texas fans are listening.
I think Ewers. I want to make something clear. I think Ewers is. I think he's going to be solid because I think Sark. I think Sark is a really good offensive mind. I think that O-line is going to be improved. That wide receiver court looks legit on paper, but Ewers was not good last year.
No,
not good at all.
He couldn't throw down the field. He was 80th in 15 yards plus.
Yeah, that's a great stat.
He struggled, and a lot of
Katie
people,
stats for a
did he
reason.
have a finger injury, this and that? Listen, hey, when you're on the field, you're evaluated by what you put on tape.
Has anyone ever said you look like Baker, by the way?
What'd you say?
Has anyone ever said you look like Baker Mayfield?
I have. I've gotten that once or twice.
Just a random thought from
and
Jack
I usually say I'm a lot taller than Baker.
I will say I've stood next to both of you. You are much taller. That is a fact.
But Baker is, I know he is a polarizing figure to many of your listeners, I would assume. He's one of the more fun dudes to hang out with. Like he is.
I love Baker Mayfield.
Oh,
I'll always love Baker Mayfield.
We love it.
Pro petty.
Yeah, he's great. What did you think, though? See, now that you've given us the green light to ask a little bit more questions, I'm going to keep doing it. What do you think about ESPN ranking him as the number 1 quarterback of the last couple decades? That's insanity.
Yeah, it's. I understand why that would be a little debatable, but man, the numbers are impressive, right?
He won a Heisman. People act like he didn't win a Heisman.
And that's the thing. I'm not saying he's bad. I'm not saying he's bad whatsoever. And if you win a Heisman, you're obviously at the top of your game. However, when you've got guys behind him that have won multiple national championships and Heisman's like Tim Tebow, or then you look at it and like, okay, yeah, Baker deserves to be in that conversation, but he's not number one.
I think
Cam
Baker
Newton?
certainly has a case for number one, but it's because he did it for so many years, right? To where like if Cam Newton would have been at Auburn for 3 years, the answer, I still think Cam Newton is what he did that season at Auburn. And by the way, it was down to Auburn and Oklahoma.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Guess who talked to Cam Newton on his official visit?
No way.
Well, you didn't do a good enough job.
Well, no,
I
you
guess.
didn't talk to his dad. You didn't talk to Cecil. You didn't talk to Cecil enough.
It also, yeah, no kidding. It's all connected because Josh Heupel, who's the quarterback's coach, told Cam Newton that he'd have to compete with Landry Jones for the job. Cam Newton did not love the sound of that. Auburn was telling him, hey, it's your job, man. We ain't got anybody else.
Yeah. And
he told me that straight up at Trent Rattery's house party. I remember it like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
And I go, what? In my head, I was like, Hype, just lie to the guy. Just tell him he's going to be the starting quarterback. Just tell him if it happens, it happens. And I loved Landry. Landry and I were super tight, but we win a national title if we would have had Cam Newton.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, come on.
Easily.
Because he went and won it with a group of guys. I think
he was
did
the
he have
only...
a single guy in that offense that
No.
started a game in the NFL?
No.
I mean, Gene
They
Chizik
didn't-
got fired a year later because that whole thing. That's another reason why I would put Cam Newton ahead of Baker Mayfield. And again, no disrespect to Baker Mayfield, but Cam Newton is the sole reason that Auburn won that national championship. He is the only reason.
But I also think Baker doesn't get enough credit for Oklahoma football was fine. But he really took what was a great program and then was not doing bad by any means, but he won every big game except college football playoff. And I mean, he came pretty damn close one year.
Yeah,
and
no, we like to make fun of it, but he did.
If a squib kick goes a little bit to the right, I think he wins that game.
Yeah.
It's tough.
I watched that squib kick in a hotel room in New Orleans by myself. My wife was at the game with her friends, but I was with the Saints at the time, and I was like, oh no, that's going to end up mattering, and unfortunately it absolutely did. But I will say this about Baker Mayfield, and it hasn't gone particularly well for him in the NFL, and there are a lot of circumstances that you can probably point to as to why. But I've been around OU football for a long time now. I don't think there has been a player that is more loved by a fan base than him.
Wow. That's
and
big.
That, like, his ability to connect to the fan base, it was unlike anything I've ever seen. Now, some of the old timers have argued with me about that. I say it all the time. He's the most beloved OU player ever. A lot of people throw Brian Bosworth into that conversation, and I wasn't alive then. I can't speak to it, but yeah, Baker Mayfield, no matter how the rest of his NFL career, that dude can do whatever he wants in the state of Oklahoma. These people will take care of him for life, no doubt, because a lot of fun memories as a result of what he did. And there's a fun conversation to be had about, that relationship, him and Lincoln Riley, right? And what the relationship did for both of them, which is always interesting to think about.
Yeah, that's true. And when you look at, just from a college standpoint, what he meant for the game too. I mean, he was so much fun to watch. I have to ask though, from a beloved fan base standpoint, because we've had this argument as well. When you look at a guy like Jalen Hurts, like, he's an OU guy, right? He's, I mean, Alabama fans, they want to claim him, but, we had this argument, especially around the Super Bowl. And, again, not to throw shade on Brandon, but he'll never hear it. Brandon was not a Jalen Hurts guy. In fact, Jack and I argued, and, till Kingdom Come
Dak
about
Prescott was better than Jalen Hurts.
Because, he's a little bit of an idiot sometimes. But, when he transferred to OU because Tua Tagovailoa took the job at Alabama, it was like, okay, well, we'll see what happens. Obviously, had a ton of success at OU, and now we look at what he's doing in the NFL. Alabama fans trying to claim him make a little bit more sense to me than if he didn't help them have the success that he did. But he's an OU guy, right?
This is the easiest way, I think, to solve this. When Philadelphia drafted him in the second round, what did it say on the card?
Oklahoma.
What'd they announce?
The Oklahoma Sooners.
Jalen Hurts, Oklahoma. No, I totally get it's a weird situation because he did a lot of good stuff for Bama.
Right.
Right. I mean, playing as a true freshman there, what he did on that comeback against Georgia, saving the day for them for that season. There's no doubt. Like he left a legacy at Alabama, but when you transfer and you take a team to the college football playoff the way that he did, and OU's fan base is the way that they are, the way that we are, he's an Oklahoma guy, damn it.
That's what I think so too. I mean, he has a little bit more of an argument than say a guy like Joe Burrow, like Ohio State trying to claim Joe Burrow, even though I know
that's strange.
Joe said
but that became a very big deal around here when that whole debate was going on, right? When it looked like he was going to win NFL MVP. But I'll go with what Jalen Hurts says. Like I'm pretty sure his stance is that he's both.
Yeah.
So
he has to say that.
But he's the most politically correct and PR guy, and it's to his credit because he's
very well
now
spoken.
He's if you have to rank brands in the NFL right now, Jalen is. Everyone that's behind him has really done it well, and he's been well spoken since he was at Alabama, and Oklahoma helped as well. But I wish you could get him behind closed doors and be like, all right, you're Boomer Sooner, right?
Yeah.
No, that's what, and he's become one of the most marketable guys in the league. I mean, obviously, extremely talented player, really good looking dude, like super buttoned up. Like he's gonna make a ton of money on the field, right, with that new contract he got, and then off the field. And his agent actually is a woman named Nicole Lynn, who is married to one of my college teammates.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so Gabe Lynn was a defensive back. We were actually in the same recruiting class. We had two Gabes in the same recruiting class. He's a Tulsa guy. I was an Oklahoma City guy. So, it's all connected, man.
Yeah.
It's all connected. But when you look at Hurts, and I know a lot of OU fans don't like doing this, but Lincoln Riley deserves a lot of credit.
Oh, my God, yes.
Oh,
the way that he changed his offense around Jalen Hurts' strengths during that 2019 season, I thought it was an absolute fantastic coaching job.
I don't think
to play the Hurts' strengths, and I think that is what inspired, like seeing him do his thing and then building that offense around him that season. I think that's what inspired the Eagles to take the chance, along with what Greg Roman was doing with Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. And I thought that Jalen could succeed in the NFL if an organization went all in on him, right? Play to his strengths. And to Philly's credit, they did. I never thought he was going to be this damn good.
God, he's so
but
good.
To his credit, guy absolutely works his ass off, and he's now getting the dividends of that.
And I think, to kind of wrap it all up, and then we'll get to my rapid fire questions. But, I love to mix it up with your fan base about Lincoln Riley, because what you just mentioned to me, it's like sometimes it feels lost to people. Now I understand Twitter is its own world, right? Like if you talk to actual OU fans, rational fans, you're sitting down having a beer, it's probably not going to be the same exact reaction. But what Lincoln Riley did for your program, and the fact that he was, in the mix for, whether it was fair or not, be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, and the quarterback factory that he really put out in Norman, and then to see the way that your fans reacted, which I understand breakups hurt. Breakups fucking suck. We know that. And the way that he left you guys, especially after being so deliberate by saying, well, I'm not going to LSU because he knew he was going to USC. I get it. But the fact that some of your fans have turned their back so hard on him it's a hard pill to swallow because he was so good while he was at OU.
Yeah, I get it though.
Oh yeah, people.
Right?
I mean, if you guys didn't
I'm
weren't
sure
mad, it
you
wouldn't be any
understand
fun.
it because I've heard you talk about A&M and what what A&M football means to you, and this.
Right.
I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but I'm very similar to a lot of people around here. The most important things in my life are my family, God, and OU football.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. So when you leave the way that Lincoln left, people, and once again, I do think, like, if he would have left for LSU, the reaction would have been different than if he than leaving for USC. Because OU people and USC people, it's just not. If you look at the Venn diagram, the middle section ain't big. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and that was another meme
It's Alex
too.
Bennett than everybody else.
Yeah, it is. It's Alex Bennett. But that,
Yeah.
but that was one of the things that people compared so much. It was like, would you rather live in Norman, Oklahoma, and then they would show a picture of his mansion in L.A. So yeah, you're right.
Live
Yeah.
in
No,
Norman.
and we know, like, LA's got good weather. There's no doubt about it. But the taxes.
You're speaking to some people that understand that up here.
I'm one of those people that said, I kind of took this approach. There's some people that are just still, anti-Lincoln. And I get that, right? They're passionate. They're all what they are. But it's like, hey, thanks for everything you did. We appreciate you. But you're either with us or against us, right? And you can go through all my tweets. You're not going to find a single one that is bashing Lincoln Riley. I never did it. Now I question why you would leave Oklahoma for USC, especially with the SEC move looming. Like, why would you do that? But it is what it is at this point. Like, I got kids, man. I don't have enough time to spend my energy on hating Lincoln Riley. I just don't have that time anymore. And I think a lot of OU fans, after this season, if BV really gets it rolling, they start winning some games, the recruiting keeps up the way that it looks like it's going to keep going, then those, that some of that bitterness will subside.
That will not be fun for me, by the way.
I don't know. If you
some of it, not all of it. There's still going to be people that
like, if we've all been in relationships and you love the person and then they cheat on you, you never
That's
never
true.
forget
Like,
but it starts to hurt a little bit less if the person
100%.
you're with is better or more successful. I think that and this happens all the time. Again, I say this, I have fun with it. I feel like sometimes people on Twitter don't realize that, like, we're having fun doing this. It's the idea that, and again, this is not the fan base as a whole, but to your point, Jack, it's like sometimes it feels like some OU fans still care so much about their ex that they would rather see their ex fail than see their current relationship succeed. Now, I know that's not realistic for the actual human beings that root for OU, but from a Twitter standpoint, when USC was playing in the Pac-12 championship, it felt like they were more excited to see USC lose than the entire OU success.
I'm going to give Oklahoma fans a little bit of credit. I think this past offseason, at least, they've been more fighting against false narratives about Brent Venables and how their future of their school than Lincoln Riley. But
I don't want them to quit caring about Lincoln Riley because I have fun with it.
Okay,
Gabe.
no, that's fair.
No, I hear you on that. It's
I
definitely
like to mix it
entertaining,
up.
But hey, after 6 and 7, you got to start worrying about yourself, right?
Yes. Well, it's like it's the Heisenberg. You kind of throw a little bit in and you just watch everything explode. All I have to do is tweet the two phrases, Oklahoma Sooners and Lincoln Riley, in a tweet, and I know exactly what's going to happen. So, I don't want that to change.
OU Twitter is the equivalent to meth for Casey. Okay, got it.
Yes. And I mean, I've had it with other fan bases, Florida State for a little bit. It really just depends on the year. All right, so I have 3 questions for you, and I'm going to just give them to you.
All right, I'm ready.
Let's do some therapy word association, the real thoughts from Gabe. How many games does Oklahoma win in 2023?
10.
Yeah,
Wow.
I'm with it.
I
I'm low
like
key
that.
at a little bit higher than him.
Now, I'm not sure if that's 10 with a bowl game win or not.
Hey,
but
we're-
10. I'm
that
just
was the
going
first
10.
thing. Okay. In how many years, not counting this year, because it is changing, in how many years does Oklahoma win a conference title again?
Ooh, I got to give K-State their respect this year. I would not be surprised if OU and K-State are playing for a conference title. Whether they win that game, I don't know. I feel like this is a trap question that for you asking me how long is it going to be till they win an SEC championship.
It's not a trap. I really genuinely want to know what you think. I mean, we're always wrong. You're way more right than we are. So.
I'm going to
wrong
say
a lot.
2026.
All right, that's great.
The Oklahoma Sooners win the SEC championship. I love that. That'd be fun.
That'll be
SEC.
well. That'll be Jackson Arnold's third season.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, we'll see. Hey, Dylan Gabriel better play well this year to start the year. You never know. But yeah, that'll be a senior year for Jackson Arnold.
That's actually a good side
Or a
question.
third
really quick.
year.
How many games does Dylan Gabriel have before the fan base that is so passionate for a reason starts calling for Jackson Arnold?
Ooh, you lose to Texas. That's when things always get interesting.
No matter how close.
OU
it's a
fans,
loss.
OU fans do not like losing that game.
No, and we've seen, and for the last few years, one of the biggest clips I think that went viral was whenever they were chanting for Caleb Williams because Spencer Rattler wasn't playing.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
I mean, that went super viral because it was like, wow, OU fans are kind of
I
assholes.
almost forget the Spencer Rattler
OU was
era.
undefeated at the time.
Yes,
too.
yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. No, but again, that's what makes college football fun. Okay, and then who?
And to the fan base's credit, they were kind of right.
Yeah, they were.
No,
they were kind of right.
They absolutely were. I think it was just such a jarring thing because it's like, we love college football. We all do this for a living. We live and breathe it. But then it's like they are still kids. It's still just like, okay, and then they hear a whole. Now, I know it wasn't the entire stadium, and it's usually just like a small group of people.
Right around the camera.
To see the camera, yeah, and then to have Spencer sit there and answer the questions the way that he should and have the class and the grace that he did. But they were right. I mean, who wouldn't want Caleb Williams?
Oh, yeah.
I do think as NIL continues to progress and like the relationship between fans and the players, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how that continues to develop, right? Especially, some guys are making really good money. NFL fans got no problem booing their players on Sundays.
None.
None.
Oh, I mean, and we're a pro petty podcast over here. By the way, I'm not saying that we shouldn't boo kids. It's more of just like more of a jarring experience to see because it's like, oh,
no,
wow.
I completely agree. That was, I was obviously there for that one. It was like, oh boy, oh no, not good.
In retrospect, Caleb Williams would be the guy. And then the last question, for the 2023 national championship, obviously when they play in 2024, would you take Georgia or the field?
I'd take the field. I think that it's just really hard to do it 3 years in a row. I mean, and I know that Kirby Smart's a tremendous coach, and the way that they've recruited is, I mean, phenomenal. And the stuff you're hearing about Carson Beck.
Oh my God.
I mean, they're talking about. And Aaron Murray and I were in the same draft class. We played in the East-West Shrine game together. He usually shoots me pretty straight when it comes to what he thinks about what's going on there. And he's like, dude, Beck is the real deal. He said he's the most talented guy they've had since Stafford.
Aaron Murray has me ready to call Carson Beck the greatest college football quarterback.
I know. I'm like, hey, man, relax. And I played with Stafford in Detroit.
Yeah.
Hey, that dude has a rocket launcher attached to his right arm. And Murray seems very high on him.
About Beck is like, I'm in on it.
You are. He is very in on it.
I'm the Carson Beck guy on this podcast, but man, Aaron Murray and Aaron's just like yourself made a great transition from playing football to media career, and I think he's somebody who's just the clips he puts out and whatnot, they're very entertaining.
Yeah, Aaron's great.
He talks about, oh my God, he talks about Carson Beck like he's the truth.
I know. I mean, we're I mean, what did I say? What are the chances for Georgia to three-peat? I said like 60%
Oh,
or
you said
something.
like 70. I was
I
like,
was
whoa.
like, oh yeah, no, 70% for sure.
You looked at that schedule? I mean, you may
It's-
not be wrong.
Now, I will say, again, to your credit, you guys did not cancel, but I believe OU's non-conference schedule is like right behind Georgia's. It's pretty easy, right?
Listen, the SMU ponies are coming to town. It's gonna be a lot of fun. No, it's Arkansas State, SMU, and then a trip to play the Tulsa Golden Hurricane, which will be a home game for OU because there's a massive amount of OU fans in Tulsa. So yeah, it should be a nice 3-0 start for the Sooners.
Yeah.
Nice and comfortable 3-0 start.
I have 2 rapid questions.
Go for it.
Most excited guy the guy you're most excited about in the 2023 class right now for Oklahoma.
Are you talking about on the team in 2023?
No, just in general. Because I mean, the class you guys signed was incredibly impressive.
Yeah. So PJ Adebawara is the only answer.
Okay.
He is, from a traits perspective, and I don't think this is over dramatic. From a traits and measurements perspective, he is the best prospect OU's ever had.
Whoa.
On the defensive line.
Okay.
This dude, and he was a 5-star for a reason.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
But he is. Are you guys? Casey, you would remember Javon Kearse, right?
Yes.
I remember.
Played at Florida.
Yeah.
I mean, just an absolute freak for the Tennessee Titans, and he has like the measurables of a young Javon Kearse.
Oh my God.
Wow.
That's a hell of a
Like his
comp.
arms are like he's got like a 7-foot wingspan.
Oh my God.
Like he's 6'5". Like OU has not had a guy that looks the way that he looks. And his ceiling, in my opinion, is number 1 pick of the draft.
Okay.
Like that's the ceiling.
Pretty good.
And then
So yeah, I'd say out of all the guys on the roster, like he's the guy.
And then this is more of a personal question, but what were the conversations like before you played UConn in the Fiesta Bowl in the locker room?
I forgot you're a UConn guy. That's funny.
Oh, well, don't
I've
you know?
got a couple stories for you.
Yeah. Don't you know Robert Griffin III said it's the loudest stadium he ever played in?
Yes.
He never played in Norman.
No, he did.
No, I know.
Oh.
It's more like he never played in Norman or College Station or anywhere like that.
Robert Griffin III and I were teammates in Cleveland, and every day I would see him, I'd say, "Hey, you're welcome for that Heisman." Every single day. Because he won it because they beat us in Waco, and that was their old stadium was a dump.
A dump. God, it was so
Their new
gross.
stadium is sweet though. I love that new stadium.
UConn went down the old stadium and beat
It's
them.
sweet.
Yeah, no, it's gross, but it's apparently he just has memory loss because he didn't play anywhere else but at the Rent because UConn is the loudest stadium in the country. But I digress.
UConn, we took that. We had a lot of fun during the week. Is that a good way of describing it?
Yeah. You guys.
We knew they
polite.
couldn't beat us.
Yeah,
okay?
it was. Yeah.
But we did, and like you have all those bowl events, like we respected those guys because they earned the right to be there.
Of course.
Right. And Coach Stoops was one of those guys that would always like, hey, they're a good football team. You got to take it seriously. You got to take prep. And we practiced hard the whole thing, but we drank a lot out there in Phoenix and Scottsdale. We had a good time, and I'll never forget it. One of their linebackers during the game, I was like, we're getting up out of a pile, and he's like, "You thought this was gonna be fucking easy, didn't you?" And I was like, "What?" And I looked up, it was like 28-7.
Yeah.
I was like, "Dude, what the hell are you talking about? Like, we are kicking y'all's ass." He was like, "You thought you were gonna beat us by 100." I was like, "What is happening right now?" And then the other story from that game is they had a defensive lineman that smelt worse than any other human being
Oh my God.
I've ever played football against. And we all told him, we were like, bro, you gotta do something. Like, what's going on here? What are you going for? You have to be able to smell this. Those are my 2 memories from that game.
Oh my God.
Fantastic. And you know that it's bad if you're saying that at a football game.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You
Yes.
as well.
There's a lot of stinky dudes, right? But it was like It was like, you know, when you walk into a really crowded bar in Europe
Yes.
and you just get hit with that wave.
It's
of
like if it was a cartoon, the green smog would come your way.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's how it felt. And I don't know if he was like, if I smell this bad, they're not going to want to block me. Maybe it did work. I don't know, but that was an easy win for the Sooners. Sorry, Jack.
Those precious memories playing UConn, stinky dudes.
Well, it was the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah, of course.
It was a fun trip. And random other memory from that game. It was really cold.
Okay.
And that stadium, I guess, doesn't have heat. At all. So they sold out of all the sweatshirts at the game. So there's a bunch of Fiesta Bowl sweatshirts.
That's awesome.
That is
I
awesome.
love
because
that.
it was cold.
So sweatshirts and stinky dudes and a lot of drinking. So, I mean, hey, what a trip. What a trip. This was very fun. I'm going to be honest. I didn't miss Brandon at all.
Nope.
Not even a little bit.
Oh, I thought about him once, but that's all.
And he's somewhere thinking about your smoking hot wife. So it's a win-win.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to know that is Brandon's one memory. And I did want to talk to Brandon about my guy, Zach Selman, is now the AD down there at Mississippi State. So Brandon better be taking good care of my guy, or else we're going to have a problem.
We'll just have to have you on again before the season starts and get a heat check on OU, and then also just have you and Brandon chop it up, and maybe he remembers a little bit more than your wife. I don't know, but I know he'll want to talk to you. Yeah, you never know.
She sticks in the memory bank. There's no doubt.
That brain of his. Well, thank you so much, Gabe. This was awesome. And, if you ever want me to come on and rile your fans up again with you and Teddy, I will gladly do so because, again, I love to mix it up with – I do love OU fans. It's a love-hate for them, but I love them very much.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on. Sorry for talking so much.
Oh, this was fantastic.
Great.
We could have talked to you for hours.
I love college football.
We can tell.
I love Oklahoma football. I know you guys love college football as well. So this was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me. Anytime.
Thanks for being here. And you guys go check out the Oklahoma Breakdown. Also on SiriusXM. What's the channel on Sirius for you guys?
375.
375.
You got to crank it a little bit. You got to crank the dial a little bit to get the Big 12 radio.
And then on Twitter, we'll obviously tag you a bunch for anyone who's listening. But you're on Twitter at Gabe Ikard.
Yeah, real creative name.
Yep.
Yeah,
it's the best way to find you. Just use your name. All right. Thanks so much, Gabe. We'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate you guys.
Bye.